Keegan asked a question which I think about a lot, and I think about having talked about versions of this with you as a producer, sound designer person being creative who then also is mixing sometimes almost always my own stuff, but sometimes other people's stuff as well. Keegan asked, how much are you soloing? It was a sort of longer question, but the idea of soloing in the mix, I tend to solo all the time when I'm producing because I'm like, oh, let me tweak this snare drum. Let me see what this keyboard sounds like. Let me run through a bunch of things and then put it into the mix. And I feel like, having talked to you for these last couple of years, I've started doing less soloing, especially when it comes to arrangement, and then even more when it comes to mixing, trying to mix, maybe in groups, if it's drums and vocals and I'm messing with the 808, maybe I bring in some other instruments, but I'm not really doing a lot of soloing or not as much soloing. Where are you at with that these days? How do you think about that?
There are very few nevers in my process, and one of the nevers is I never mess with a sound while it's soloed by itself, ever. I've never saw Tony do it. I don't solo a sound and EQ or do anything to that sound. The only reason I would solo a sound is to declick it or do some surgery on it, but I would never make any mix decisions soloed. That being said, I solo all the time in groups. Part of my live Twitch mix last week, I think one of the main things that I think I showed is how I listen to different versions of the arrangement in solo modes to hear the song in different ways. Especially when you have the producer and artist in the room, you can showcase well, what's the guitar vocal of this? What's the keyboard vocal? And what's the drum and vocal of this? So, on a rap record, for example, I spend a lot of time mixing just the drums and vocal. And what I'm mixing the vocal with the drums in. So the drums are mixed, and then I drop the vocal in before I put a synth in or a keyboard or something a lot of the time. And then I'll mute the drums in that same trap record, and I'll mix the sample to the vocal. And I'll save as, so it's a different thing, so I can, revert back if I fuck it up. But I want to hear the interactions of all these instruments with the vocal. But I'll never make a decision with a soloed instrument. It makes no sense because mixing is the interaction between instruments and sonic elements, not how they sound on their own.
Yeah, I like that answer. And I would imagine, like you said, if you're doing something like declicking or you hear some, like, where's that pop coming from? You're obviously going to solo to try to find it, that sort of thing.
Surgery can be done.
I was gonna add to that. It's actually, there's some questions like this that come up on the Discord and sometime in the DMs. I haven't had enough producers on here. I need to have some more producers to have some of these songwriting, producing conversations. Songwriting, producing? Let's go with it.
Yeah, let's go with it.
And one of the questions is about getting stuck on productions. And I find what you just said, listening in different groups is a great way to figure out what's wrong in a production, what's wrong in an arrangement, is to listen to the vocal against all the mid-range instruments, listen to the vocals and the drums, listen to just the instrumental, listen to everything but the lead vocal, like the TV mixes, as they would call it. Pull out the lead vocal and see how everything's adding up. And you start to, sometimes you'll hear something that's wrong, sometimes you'll hear things that are getting in the way. Sometimes you'll just be like, wow, this sounds so much better without all that other shit. What do I actually need to put in here? Trying to minimize. I was saying this the other day in a session, that a lot of the way, I think it was yesterday, I was in with an artist finishing a production on a song we did a while back. And she wanted to hear some different synths and some extra things in the chorus. And so I was like, cool, what I'm going to do is just throw a ton of shit at it. And then we'll go back and like parse through and just like mute different things and see. So I just went on instinct and made a bunch of like disgusting synth sounds with different chains, and then we kind of went through the chorus with the vocal and the different synths and different combinations, and some of them had bass, and some of them I added an 808 on the bottom. Some had the live bass, some had the full live bass, some had the live bass with all of the low end put out and the synth, and we just kind of went through combinations. And it's a really powerful way to figure out what's working, because in the end, as you were sort of alluding to there, the vocal is the thing that is ultimately the most important, and that's the thing you don't want to get in the way of. You want to complement, you want to carve space for, you want to interact with, call and response, that sort of thing. But you start putting things that get in the way of that, you're often losing, and that's a big way for me to solve that problem.
It's a way to tell a story right? So you're, the songwriter's telling a story with a lyric, and the production is adding elements, come and go, and kaleidoscopes, whatever we're going for. And the mixer can help continue that story by presenting things in ways that maybe the producer and artist didn't instinctually go for. And a lot of the times with my clientele that seem to come back for more records, when I'm exposing the things that they almost forgot were there, right? And when I'm doing that, it's because I'm realizing that those are the insecure moments. Those are the things that make that make the song left of center, right? Like, oh, that weird thing. Oh, let's tuck that. No, that shit's cool. Like, what if we reframe this pre-chorus with that, weird plucky thing a little bit louder, and the more sustained, safe thing quieter, and all of a sudden the groove element changes. So you get a shift in feel and dimension in the pre-chorus before we go back to whatever that linear feel is in the chorus. And then it makes the linear thing feel, more interesting because we haven't heard it in 8 bars, right? Or 4 bars. So, we've talked about this a lot, but I think about mixing pop music, linear pop music, very scientifically, because it's interesting to me how to make 4-bar loops or 8-bar loops that things just block, enter. No one's fading anymore. Nothing's like turning out, nothing's filtering. It's just
not
like
a performance. It's not a human playing a thing as much.
Yeah. So how do we create this? Again, it's storytelling. It's creating moments. And I find that soloing or muting, as someone else put in the chat, yeah, sure, you can mute. I don't like to I'm not on a console. I'm not trying to have everything muted. So the song is on, I solo things, hear what's there, and I'll solo things in groups in order to, present it. It sounds counterintuitive to mute. And for some reason, I don't know why, I use mute automation. So if you have mute automation and you mute something that has mute automation, then it unmutes in the thing. So I use solo for that reason. Go ahead and mute if you want. You'd have to bypass your automation though, and that sounds annoying. So I don't know exactly where I was going with that, except for that's my way to express where I think the story should go. And that's why soloing works, because you could hear these elements in their rawest form.
Yeah, it's better than all or nothing. You can sort of see components of the story. I like that a lot.
Thanks for watching. Just a reminder, all of this content is free. There's no secret knowledge here. There's no Patreon. We don't read ads. We don't have sponsors. We're just trying to build a knowledge base. All that we ask in return is that you share it with somebody. Thanks so much.